fact the aircrafts are constantly experiencing forces which impact their motion. The force of gravity is always acting on the aircraft at all times. All aircrafts experience forces in large or minuscule quantities which greatly impact how fast or slow the aircraft will go. Let's specifically discuss the effects of the forces on the motion of the Royal Canadian Aircraft Sikorsky CH-124 Sea King. There are four main forces which act on the motion of a helicopter. These forces include gravity, lift, thrust, and drag. The gravity is a force that attracts an object to the center of the Earth or towards any other physical body which has mass. Lift is the sum of all the forces on a body that allow it to move perpendicular to the direction of airflow. The thrust is a reaction force. When a system exerts a force in one direction, the thrust will exert the equal amount of force in a negative direction. The drag is commonly referred to as air resistance.
When the helicopter is at rest on the ground, there are two vertical forces acting upon the helicopter. There are no horizontal forces acting on the helicopter. The first vertical force being the normal force in the upwards direction, and the second being the force of gravity in the downwards direction. In this situation, the helicopter is not in motion and remains stationary on the ground. According to Newton's first law, an object is either experiencing constant velocity or no motion at all when the net force is equal to zero. Furthermore, since the net force is equal to zero, the force of gravity and normal forces are equal to one another. Along with that, when the aircraft is stationary in the air, the only force which alters is that instead of normal force, we have the lift force acting on the helicopter. Due to the fact that the aircraft is not in motion in the air, the net force is equal to zero.
When the helicopter is ascending, it experiences motion in the vertical direction. There are two significant forces acting on the helicopter in the y direction. They include the force of gravity and lift. There are forces also acting on the helicopter in the x direction. Since the helicopter is in motion in the upwards direction, the force of gravity is less than the force of lift. Therefore, the net force is in the positive direction, and the helicopter will accelerate towards the net force since the forces are unbalanced. Due to this fact, the helicopter is moving in the vertical direction. The horizontal force will have a net force of zero.
When the helicopter is descending, it experiences motion in the y direction. It experiences the force of gravity and the lift force in the vertical direction. Since the helicopter is descending, the force of gravity is greater than the force of lift. Therefore, the helicopter experiences motion in the downwards direction, which indicates that the net force is in the negative direction. The forces are unbalanced. Due to this, the helicopter will accelerate towards the net force. Furthermore, the helicopter is moving in the vertical direction. The horizontal forces have a net force of zero.
When the helicopter is moving forward, it experiences motion in the horizontal and vertical direction. In order for the helicopter to be in motion in the horizontal direction, it experiences the forces of thrust and drag. The main rotor tilts in the forward direction and generates the force of thrust, and it is present in the positive direction. The force of drag is applied on the helicopter because of the presence of air resistance, and this force is present in the negative direction. The forces are unbalanced, and the greater force is thrust. Therefore, the helicopter will accelerate towards the net force, which is in the positive direction. Due to the fact that the helicopter is moving in the horizontal direction, the vertical forces will have a net force of zero.
When the helicopter is moving backwards, it experiences motion in the x and y direction. In order for the helicopter to be in motion in the horizontal direction, it experiences the forces of thrust and drag. The main rotor tilts in the negative direction and generates the force of thrust, and it is present in the negative direction. The force of drag is applied on the helicopter because of the presence of air resistance, and the force is present in the positive direction. The forces are unbalanced, and the greater force is thrust. Therefore, the helicopter will accelerate towards the net force, which is in the negative direction. Due to the fact that the helicopter is moving in the horizontal direction, the vertical force will have a net force of zero.
Now,
do you
understand
the propelling
issue
about helicopters?
Stay in motion!